Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight on a rainy night. My name is Nicholas Manousis. I'm the Executive Director here at the Horological Society of New York. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very happy to welcome you to our May 2024 lecture. And as usual, we'll get started with a few announcements. An education update. This is a huge education update. We're going all over the place. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see we're going pretty much all over the country, coming up through the rest of the year. So plenty of opportunity if you're watching us online, plenty of cities that we're coming to visit. So please look us up and come and take a class. Well, of course, we'll have our New York classes ongoing through the month and our weekend classes as well. Yes, we're very excited for all of our traveling education coming up through the rest of the year. And we're thankful to all of our hosts who host us in the local cities when we travel. So looking forward to that. A quick recap. We just had our 158th anniversary gala on April 6th, and it was just across the street at the Harvard Club, and it was just an incredible night. Completely sold out. We maxed out the venue, squeezed an extra table in or two, and it was just a really fun evening. And more than just being a fun evening, it was a productive evening. It was a meaningful evening. And why do I say that? Because we awarded a lot of financial aid that night. It was a record amount for us. We awarded $150,000 in student scholarships and direct awards to watchmaking schools across the country. So we awarded 25 students in total, and you see all of their photos there on the screen. So congratulations to all of this year's winners. And pretty soon we'll be announcing the 2025 date, so watch for that coming soon. Very happy to announce that HSNY has established a partnership with the Antiquarian Horological Society in London. And AHS, of course, tells the story of time. HSNY is a proud partner of like-minded nonprofit organizations. And you'll see us promoting the activities that the AHS is doing, and likewise, they'll be promoting some of our activities. So please look them up if you have a chance. They're a really wonderful organization. And of course, Father's Day is coming up, June 16th. And I've just got to give a little bit of an advertisement out there. Check out our shop. If you are looking for a gift for a father who likes watches and clocks and other horological goodies, we may have some things that would appeal to them. And you can find those all on our website and upstairs on the 5th floor in our library during the day. Okay, now on to the main event for tonight. Tonight is a special night. Something I always look forward to having our friends from Grand Seiko here with us. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the Japanese sense of aesthetics, the preservation and evolution of Grand Seiko design, with special guest Mr. Junichi Kamata. And speaking tonight also is Joseph Kirk, the brand curator and director of marketing for Grand Seiko Corporation of America. So please join me in welcoming Joseph Kirk to the podium.
Thank you, Nick. It's very much a pleasure and an honor to be back at Horological Society of New York. This is now the third lecture that we've done here, and I can't say, I can't express how proud and honored I am to be at the podium. Tonight's lecture is a little bit of a different subject. So in the past, we've lectured about spring drive and more focused on the technical aspect of watchmaking. We're always trying to pursue new heights in accuracy and performance. Today we're going to focus on aesthetics, which, clearly I'm not Japanese. So to focus on the Japanese sense of aesthetic is kind of odd coming from my mouth, But I want to give you the outside perspective. And thankfully tonight I have a great special guest joining me to help give his perspective, who's responsible for all of Grand Seiko design. So you're not just going to hear from me, and very much looking forward to having him speak as well. So, in starting, right, nearly a century ago, Junichi Tanizaki wrote this book in praise of shadows. It's more of an essay, or like a love story, let's say. And realistically, he explains how Japan has adapted to shadows, has integrated them into their everyday life, and really built an aesthetic based on the concept of light and shadow. So one prime example is washitsu, or the tatami room, right? It seems barren to most Westerners, but this soft light that fills the room through the paper, the washi paper doors made of wood, we're able to use this ambient light to create a distinct sense of beauty. Tanizaki moved from Tokyo to Kyoto, where time seemed to move slowly. This preservation of the old ways kind of helped inspire him to embrace the shadows, find how they blended with light, and create a new sense of aesthetic, or praise this new sense of aesthetic. His essay focused mainly on architecture, a bit on food and lacquerware, as well as household items. But the depth created by shadow was really something that was distinct and unique, and he found really charming. So not only to Tanizaki, of course, but this is something that we're seeing in Japanese culture as a whole. So light and shadow play a pivotal role in Japan, in the Japanese sense of aesthetic. Like I said, not just in kind of everyday life, but also in architecture and everyday household goods. So this sense of aesthetic is also something that's very important to Grand Seiko. And this praise of shadows and this blend of light and shadow is something that is very important to our brand. Japan's sense of aesthetic comes from living alongside nature and embracing it, right? Seeing these transitional seasonal changes and focusing on these micro seasons. So you see 4 seasons typically, right? In Japan, there's observed 24 seki, or these seasonal phases. And these seasonal phases express the gradation of time and this transition from one period to the next. This evolution of nature and this constant change of nature helps inspire many of the aspects of Japanese design, alongside the elements of light and shadow that are cast. So beauty is not necessarily found in the object itself, but more so in how that transitional change affects it, as well as the way it interplays with light and shadow. So to summarize, Tanizaki's message of light and shadow is really defining a 3-dimensional shape, utilizing light and shadow, creating emotion, and also creating a distinct aesthetic that really cannot be found anywhere else in the world. Grand Seiko has embraced this, right? They've put this into every design that they have done. And one of the things that I think is most important are the true values of Grand Seiko. So back in 1960, when Grand Seiko was born, there was very much a focus on the practical aspects of watchmaking, right? So when we created the first Grand Seiko in 1960, the sole focus was on precision. We wanted to create the most accurate watch possible. Precision was important to the Seiko company, the Seiko group now overall, and Grand Seiko was made to be the pinnacle of precision in Japan. It was the very first chronometer that was produced in Japan. It met all of the criteria of the excellent grade chronometer back in 1960 and was the first of its kind. So the precision is really what built the foundation of Grand Seiko. Of course, if you have a precise watch, it very much should be legible. So legibility is one of the other elements that was the foundation of Grand Seiko's design aesthetic. So precision, legibility, right? Because what good is a precise watch if you can't read it accurately? And then, of course, durability. For a watch to actually be accurate, especially when you're wearing it in everyday use, it has to be durable. So the movement needs to be robust. The case construction needs to be robust. All of these elements are very important for a practical sense of watchmaking. And in order for Grand Seiko to be the pinnacle of horology in Japan, we needed to meet all of this criteria. Last but not least is beauty. Like I said, this is a very practical watch. So in 1960, Grand Seiko's design was really focused on practical everyday wear. It was made with the intent to be worn, to be precise, to be accurate, to be durable, and great for everyday wear. But the sense of beauty had not quite evolved. It was really focused on the practical aspects, but the sense of aesthetic was not evolved until we started to move forward in time. It wasn't until 1967 that Grand Seiko introduced basically its design code, its design grammar, right? We introduced this through a model called the 44GS. The 44GS is iconic in Grand Seiko today. It is our signature design and established what is known as Grand Seiko style. Right? Grand Seiko's very first designer actually implemented design rules to go along with the 44GS, and this has influenced every Grand Seiko design from then on to today. These rules still focus on the practical elements of watchmaking, but really wanted to contribute to that aesthetic and that interplay of light and shadow that was so important in Tanazaki's love note in praise of shadows. So the rules themselves, they focused on straight lines, flat surfaces, and many intersecting planes with a beautiful polish to create a sparkle that would very easily catch your eye. And this was an important sense of aesthetic back in 1967 to look in a showcase. When you're looking amongst many different brands of watches, Grand Seiko had to have a distinct appeal. And so the design code was really built to create a brilliant sparkle that was drawing your attention out of one of many brands in the showcase. So we wanted to catch your eye at a glance. Then from there, you can learn about the precision, the legibility, the durability. The design principles were that it should always retain flat surfaces and only two-dimensional curves. Generally, we don't use three-dimensional curves in Grand Seiko, right? That's against the rules. Some exceptions apply, but general rule. Flat surfaces should always be as wide as possible, right? That will help create a distinct sense of beauty, but also helps in other elements such as legibility. And then every surface should have a completely distortion-free mirror finish. So these three principles were the guiding light that helped create the sense of aesthetic. But from there were 9 elements, right? 9 other rules. And these 9 rules started with a double-wide index at the 12 o'clock. So the reason we wanted to always have a double-wide index at the 12 o'clock was to make sure that at a glance, you can see distinctly what time it is, right? If that 12 o'clock index is wide, even if you're looking at your watch sideways or upside down, you can still tell where the 12 o'clock position is. So always a double-wide index or wider. There's a curved side profile, right? So like I said, no three-dimensional curves, but you can always tell that two-dimensional curve on the side profile. Always to do multifaceted hands and markers. Now, this is one of the most beautiful aspects of Grand Seiko in terms of design. Many have commented on the beauty of the hands and markers in Grand Seiko, and this highly complex, highly faceted design is utilizing light and shadow to create a distinct sense of legibility. To also help enhance the legibility, a flat dial is generally used. So flat dial combined with these multifaceted hands and markers give you a really, truly legible watch, no matter what angle you're viewing. And of course, for the beauty aspect, always a highly polished mirror surface for the case as well as the bezel. So more up until recently, if you looked at a Grand Seiko, you could always tell it was a Grand Seiko because the bezel was always polished, right? Things have changed. Things have evolved over time. But this is 1967's rules, right? Lastly was a semi-recessed crown for comfort, right? It's not digging in your wrist. It's not protruding outward. Actually, not last. Second to last. This is one of my favorite profiles to look at a Grand Seiko. When you have one on your wrist, please look at it from this angle, because the inward angle, the slope of the bezel and the case go down towards your wrist. And this is important for the overall wear and comfort. This way, even if the watch was tall, if it was automatic as an example back in 1967, it would seem thinner. It's deceiving your eyes and making the watch actually wear more flat than it actually is. And this is true today with modern Grand Seiko. Please look at the watch on your wrist before judging it by the numbers, because the measurements are always going to seem taller than the way it looks on your wrist. So it's a trick. It's all a trick, an optical illusion. So really, all of these traits increased either the legibility, the beauty, the overall aesthetic of the watch was enhanced, but they also had some practical elements. The thing that still confuses me the most, though, is why the watch today, or I should say the design today, is known as the 44GS. It makes no sense, because actually the term 44GS comes from the movement itself. So there's really no relevance why 44GS is the name of the design when it's pertaining to the 4420 caliber that was inside. But with that said, some mysteries are better left unsolved. So looking at the design principles and the elements that are really the foundation of Grand Seiko's design, and you can see this moving forward through today's modern products. Now we have kind of a keen sense of what the rules are for Grand Seiko. And the rules make it seem very difficult to create a new Grand Seiko design. So, unfortunately, there are hard rules, but realistically, this gives a new sense for our designers and our design team to really try and cater to these rules, but at the same time create a new and continue to pursue and evolve. Always try and do better than your predecessors. And so this is the goal. But now that we know a little bit about the base foundation of Grand Seiko's sense of aesthetic, we can learn a little bit more about how we actually make the components that create this sense of beauty. So all of our hands are multifaceted, diamond cuts, as well as our indexes. Right? This concept is the same as a diamond. The more facets there are, the more perfectly polished they are, the more they sparkle like a diamond. And so even in low light settings, if you look at your Grand Seiko, that slightest beam of light will capture on one of the edges of one of the hands or one of the markers, and will make it easy to read, despite the fact there's no luminous paint. So this is something that every Grand Seiko has. Now, nowadays there's luminous paint used in many of the sports models, but the reality is we want to create an aesthetic that's easy to read in almost any setting. Contrast plays a very important role in the legibility of Grand Seiko. We want to make sure every dial is very easy to read, of course beautiful, but at the same time, the practicality is first. So when you look at these beveled edges on all of our indexes in our hands, there will almost always be one side that shines light and one side that casts a shadow. So it doesn't matter if the dial is white or black or anything in between, there is always contrast on the outer edge of the markers itself. And that's going to help enhance the legibility. Same goes for the hour and minutes hand. This way, these facets on the side, which are incredibly complex to manufacture and make, they're helping enhance the legibility while at the same time creating a beautiful aesthetic. In our new Evolution 9 collection, we've increased the quantities of facets and grooves, helping improve the legibility overall. So you can see that we're continuously pursuing new heights in not just the watchmaking, the movements, the precision, but also in the legibility and the beauty of the watch overall. One of the other things I love is when you look at the hands of a Grand Seiko, right? On a black dial, typically you'll find that the top surface of the hands are going to be brushed finish. This captures light and makes it easy to read against a dark dial. This process is also done by craftsmen, by the way, so just so you have that touch of hand sense. And then for the top surface of a lighter tone dial, you have a distinct mirror polish, right, which can be more better known as black polishing. This helps attract black to the top surface of the hand, so in a light tone dial, will make it easier to read. A lot of contrast, whether it's a top surface or those beveled edges, improving the legibility and, once again, also improving the overall beauty. Now, this I don't get to show in public very often, so I'm very excited to show. The other sense of aesthetic in terms of beauty is how we make our hands that are cobalt blue. So this is a second hand and a craftsman with the title of bluing specialist who stands at this little hot plate all day, one by one takes the second hand, heats it on this little copper tray, and watches it change from a silver tone, a polished silver tone, until it hits the perfect shade of cobalt blue. This craftsman does this process one by one, over and over again, all day, every day, for the rest of his life. I would go insane. But with the title obtained of bluing specialist and handing down to his next generation and teaching this craft to the next generation, he's able to create a distinct sense of beauty, not just for our second hands, but if you see a cobalt blue GMT hand or a power reserve indicator hand, that's the work that you get behind that. And by doing it this way, one by one, as opposed to doing it in a kiln in batches, we can control the quality and consistency and make sure that there's no discoloring on every hand that he produces. So, one of the really special elements on Grand Seiko that seems almost nothing. So in looking at this image, you can probably tell that Grand Seiko cases are very complex in terms of their overall geometry. Right? These shapes are done intentionally, and they are completely polished by hand. And this is one of the distinct traits of Grand Seiko that many have grown to appreciate over the years. We're known for our movements, of course. Dials are, one of the most talked about nowadays. But really, the cases are extremely special and crafted by hand. And all the work and labor that goes into it is truly, truly impressive and amazing in many different ways. When it comes down to this complex geometry, we don't do it just purely to say that it's complex. We do it to obtain that true Japanese sense of aesthetic, right? The interplay of light and shadow is very important. And when you look at some of these beveled edges, they'll do the same thing as I was mentioning with the indices, right? Let's see if I can get this to light up here for you. So you have the top surface that will attract light as long as direct light's exposed to it. But then this bevel on the side will be cast in shadow. And same can be said for, this is our 44GS modern interpretation design. And then we have our iconic snowflake case on the left side, which has this bevel on the edge, which you can see is casting the shadow while the case side is capturing the light. So it's all about the angle of the light and creating this dramatic contrast to create a two-dimensional sense of beauty, even though it's a three-dimensional product. So you have an aesthetic that is unique based on the beveling and the flat surfaces and the interplay of light and shadow. So when we were here back in 2019, if I remember correctly, someone in the audience asked, what is Zaratsu polishing? Zaratsu polishing, it's the fun buzzword that I love to say ever so much, Zaratsu, Zaratsu. It's not really a word that has any distinct meaning in Japanese. I'll explain a little bit of what it is. But at the time, this was in the Q&A session after our lecture about Spring Drive. So at the time he was the CEO and chairman of Grand Seiko Corporation of America. Now he is the president of Seiko Watch Corporation overall. So, and Mr. Akio Naito wishes he could be here tonight to attend the lecture, but unfortunately his roles have increased in responsibility, so he couldn't join us tonight. But his simple answer to what is Zaratsu is, unfortunately, that would take 30 minutes to explain. I'm here to explain that tonight, but not in 30 minutes. I'm going to condense it down as much as I can. So typically, buffing is used to achieve a beautiful polish on a watch case. And Grand Seiko is no different in that regard. We do utilize this process in our processes. So we have many different steps that are involved in crafting a Grand Seiko case. And buffing is a small portion of what's actually done to craft a Grand Seiko case. So here you can see a buffing wheel. Buffing wheel is typically a soft cotton-type material using an abrasive and polishing on the outer edge of the wheel. Zaratsu is a hard metal disc with an abrasive on the front. And we're using the broad surface to polish and shape the case. So this is a very complex, very hand-oriented process. You cannot automate this process. It can only be done by hand. And so the craftsmen and women of our studios are responsible for crafting every Grand Seiko case with the utmost precision, and they say that they can even feel and hear the difference when a case is from starting to finish, right? They know by sense how to craft these cases with the Zaratsu polishing wheel. So it's not just as simple as one Zaratsu process for all cases. There are many different iterations, but in reality, you have to Zaratsu polish a case to create its shape. Following the mirror finishing that we achieve with Zaratsu polishing and creating the flat surface in the many intersecting planes of Grand Seiko cases, this complex geometry, right? All these flat surfaces connect at some point in the case. Then we can apply what they call either sujime or hairline finishing, right? In the factory, in our manufacturers, they call sujime. Or streak finishing. This is the brushed finishing that we apply to Grand Seiko. This is also applied by hand. So there is a common misunderstanding that if it has more mirror finishing, that there is more work in the Grand Seiko. And so if you see a watch with a lot of brushed finish, it has to be Zaratsu polished first, then they apply the brushed finishing. So this is a distinct trait of Grand Seiko, and like I said, all of these processes are done by hand. So, like I said, it's not as simple as just one type of process for Zaratsu. So we have many different materials that we use, we have many different case shapes that we create, and basically each one requires different adaptation. So Zaratsu is a name, right, that was adapted from a machine that was imported from Europe back in the 1950s to Japan. And so the Salaz brothers polishing machine was the original name. And so Zaratsu is the word Salaz, translated to Japanese, and then translated back to English. So it's not a distinct Japanese word, but it is a unique word that was adapted from the name of the machines. Now, the machines themselves, the tools that they utilize, and even many of the processes have changed and evolved over the years since the 1950s and 60s. So it is not the same as you would find on a Grand Seiko back then necessarily. But there are many adaptations of Zaratsu. And we want to continue to explore new methods of finishing to create this beautiful and distortion-free mirror finish. So when it comes down to Zaratsu, many different iterations to create this very distinctly flat, beautiful, and multifaceted case. And like I said, all of this is done by hand. We want to achieve a brilliance that you don't see on another brand. And that's our end goal. Right? We want to create this beautiful interplay of light and shadow, this Japanese sense of aesthetic that you will not find elsewhere. When you look at the shape of a Grand Seiko, there's always going to be these multifaceted designs, again, kind of going back to the diamond shape. Right? The more facets, the more angles, the more brilliant the sparkle, the more interplay of light and shadow. And we want to continue to do this across many materials, right? Stainless steel is our starting point, like a 316L stainless steel is an example. So that's our starting point. But we've even adapted and created Zaratsu polishing techniques unique to platinum. Platinum is a very difficult material to work with. Platinum, if you try to apply to a Zaratsu polishing wheel, can get very hot and very sticky very quickly, and you could typically not achieve a flat surface and distortion-free mirror finish with Zaratsu polishing on platinum. Of course, We have achieved that, and we're very proud of that. And this unique process was adapted for Grand Seiko, and now is not just used on platinum, but we're also using on gold. So this process we first implemented on our 8-day power reserve watch, which we introduced originally in 2016. The reference number on this is SBGD201, with what we call our diamond dust dial. So this is one of our masterpieces from our micro artist studio. This is a completely handcrafted movement. The polishing to the platinum is probably one of the most distinct in the industry today, with all flat surfaces and sharp edges, right? We want to create, again, that beautiful interplay of light and shadow. And this is completely mirror polished. There are no brushed attributes to this case design at all. In looking at this, it does follow suit of our brand philosophy, which many of you, I'm sure, know at this point, is the nature of time. Right? Nature is a big part of the Japanese sense of aesthetic and creates a distinct beauty that is, very much Japanese in the sense of aesthetic. And so nature influences a lot of the designs in Grand Seiko. This is influenced by diamond dust, which is a natural occurring phenomenon in very cold temperatures. So this dial process, right, to create, again, a beauty in Grand Seiko that is unique compared to other Grand Seiko dials. So typically, for a Grand Seiko dial, we'll do what we call press patterning, right? We basically have a mold, right? We want to create a unique texture, but we want to have it consistent from one watch to the next. So we apply pressure to a dial base, typically made of brass, and the mold can be carved by hand. It can be carved using various tools, or the pattern can be created utilizing various tools and various processes, but typically, we'll press the dial, and then we'll apply either a type of lacquer paint to achieve a particular color, or we'll apply an electroplating process, also referred to as a galvanizing process. And so that is electroplating will typically create, we can do white, we can do silver, we can do a wide variety of different platings. So for the 8-day, we do a different technique. And we actually combine two of those techniques. So the 8-day has a textured dial, so created by press, then utilizing lacquer paint as well as electroplating processes in a multi-layer structure that then applies a unique process on the top coat that reflects light at multiple angles. So when you look at this dial, and I have examples of these dials here tonight and the whole watches themselves, you can see the Zaratsu polishing on the platinum firsthand, and you can see this very distinct sparkling dial in our 8-day products in the showcase back there after the lecture is over. So for the white dial, we call this a diamond dust dial. And this is only found on the platinum model, and we only utilize in precious metal models. This is a very costly and time-consuming technique, so it's best showcased in precious metal. We also make in rose gold, which has a black dial with, like I said, rose gold case, and then rose gold accents to get that shimmering effect. So this shimmering sparkle is distinct to this dial. Almost looks like aventurine, but is made in-house through our own process. Another aspect of the sense of beauty in Grand Seiko is the movement design itself. So incorporating, of course, light and shadow, which you can see the beveling on the edge of the bridge here is beautifully mirror polished and contrasts beautifully with the sujime, or the hairline finish of the one-piece bridge that we use in our 9R01 8-day power reserve spring drive movement. So the beauty of the sense of aesthetic in light and shadow is also implemented into our movement design, but nature is also incorporated in the movement design itself. So if you look at the caliber 9R01 on the screen here, you can see that under the word days is this little carved micro artist studio logo. This depicts the location of our micro artist studio. If you were at the micro artist studio and in the distance, you could see Mount Fuji, assuming it was a clear day. So there's the outline of Mount Fuji on the beveled edge of the one-piece bridge. And you'd also see the rising sun, which is depicted by the glide wheel, and the power reserve indicator depicts Lake Suwa. The jewels and the screws depict the city lights of the city of Suwa at night, And if you flip your watch over, you basically have a map of central Japan, as seen from our micro artist studio, of course. One of my favorite models to talk about is Kodo, right, which has the name Kodo derives from the term heartbeat, the term for heartbeat. And Kodo produces a unique heartbeat within the watch industry, and it's how it inherited its name. But when you look at the examples of Kodo that we've introduced over the last few years, there is definitely a distinct theme going on. And of course, that theme is based on koin, or light and shadow. Right? So in 2022, we introduced what is known as yoyami in Japanese, or twilight model. That was the first introduction of Kodo. For this year at Watches and Wonders, in which we also have in the showcase and back to show you, we have the concept of daybreak, or hakume in Japanese. So these two models are literal translations, more or less, of light and shadow in design that is very distinct and unique in our masterpiece collection. So when you look at the aesthetic and difference in finish, the choice for a dark gunmetal gray finish for almost all of the bridges and components within the first iteration of Kodo, the Twilight, give a very dark and shadowy sense, let's say. But like I said, this concept is based on yoyami, or that last bit of light before dusk. For the hakume, or the daybreak model, we opted for a bright silver plating for majority of the bridges and components within this movement. Now keep in mind, this is about a 340 component movement. Everything is hand finished, and this meticulous finish is showcased extremely well on either model, but with the light silver tone polishing, the black polishing of the edges and the screws is a little bit more distinct. So the aesthetic is a little bit maybe more three-dimensional in my point of view, but the overall aesthetic has completely changed compared to the original model, even though they are of the same design and the same mechanism. At the same time, instead of doing the ruby colored jewels, we've introduced the jewels in sapphire tone, with obviously the exception is going to be on the carriage arm for the seconds indicator of the constant force. So the design of the Kodo is also incorporating one of the Japanese traits of the concept of ma. Ma is like a value or an appreciation for empty space. And so the term ma, the kanji character for ma, is based on the kanji for like door and light. And so this represents light kind of passing through a door or a passage, a gate. And this concept is very clear and apparent in the aesthetic design of Kodo with its skeletonized design, which basically voids any components on the sides of the movement in order to draw your eye, of course, to read the time. But most people, the eye will be drawn to the 6 o'clock, where you can see the constant force tourbillon, both sweeping and ticking as if the constant force mechanism was chasing the tourbillon itself. So the aesthetic of Kodo is very distinct and unique, and the concept of ma is very apparent. Now, it's not just in the aesthetic of the movement design itself, but also in the hollowed out lug construction in the case. So when you look at the case construction of the Kodo, you have an inner case that is made of cold forged platinum 950, that of course is Zaratsu polished. And then we have an exterior shroud of armor. So these two attachments you see on the case side, as well as the exterior bezel, are made of an alloy we call brilliant hard titanium. This alloy of titanium, which is proprietary to Grand Seiko, is over twice the hardness of stainless steel. And one of the best aspects, and like I said, it acts as armor, so that's why we're using this very hard metal. But one of the other aspects of it is its brilliance. So when you look at this material, this titanium alloy, which is typically very dark and not easy to polish or not polishable at all, if you look at it next to the platinum, you can hardly tell the difference, if at all. So this is one of the brilliances of this brilliant hard titanium, is its tone matched to the platinum. And when it comes to alloys, we're continuing to evolve and push boundaries and try and introduce new things. So we have alloys of titanium as well as now alloys of stainless steel. So we've introduced, in recent years, we've introduced a new alloy that is ever brilliant stainless steel. With this steel, we have achieved basically what is the most corrosion-resistant steel used at all within the watch industry. So lack of corrosion means that it's longer lasting. That's why we're using it, right? We want to make every Grand Seiko as long lasting as possible. And that is the point of this ever brilliant stainless steel, is to, of course, prevent corrosion as much as possible, but also the brilliance of it is another benefiting factor. So it is whiter in tone than you would find with typical 316 or 904L stainless steel. Zaratsu is a perfect mirror. So it's going to be very difficult to tell looking in a mirror that it's whiter in tone than 316L as an example. But when you look at the brushed elements on a watch using this new ever brilliant steel, which we have an example in the showcase in back for you to see, it pops, it's vibrant, it's very white or cool tone, let's say. So our brand philosophy, which I've mentioned earlier, is the nature of time. Right? The nature of time is pertaining to, of course, nature and its evolution over time, that passage of time that transitions from season to season, all 24 or more of them, as we see it. Right? The nature of time is also the status or the being of time. Right? We're a watch company, of course. We focus on the element of time. So nature and time go hand in hand. Right? This is, again, pertaining back to the Japanese sense of aesthetic and observing the passing seasons, right? These transitional phases, sometimes fleeting moments, if you will. One of the most iconic models within the Grand Seiko portfolio, I guess we didn't originally call, but was nicknamed the Snowflake. Right? This represents the windswept snow in the Shinshu region of Japan, in Nagano, central Japan, where we have our Shinshu watch studio that crafts all of our spring drive models. So this was based on the concept of the windswept snow with a dial pattern that emulates that look, that aesthetic, also with, of course, the beautiful tempered blue second hand for that kind of cold feeling of winter, and a case and bracelet made of what we call high-intensity titanium. So another titanium alloy that we utilize more broadly across the Grand Seiko brand, which can also achieve a bright color and a beautiful Zaratsu finish. Now, one of the most popular, one of the newer, introduced in 2019 and known as Shunbun, represents the cherry blossoms as they fall to, let's say, a river and dance on top of the water. Right? This is known as Hana Ikara in Japan. So Hana Ikara is the concept based on this for this watch, which utilizes our 62GS case design. This is a bezel-less case design that we actually introduced also in 1967, just before the 44GS. And we basically had eliminated the bezel to make the watch appear thinner. Because it was an automatic movement and taller than most of the manual wind movements back in those days. So now it's more for an aesthetic sense, but utilizes our automatic spring drive caliber and also utilizes our high-intensity titanium alloy. So again, not just the design of the dial, but the movement itself. So if you were to look at the most iconic, probably spring drive caliber in our portfolio is the caliber 9R65. We're celebrating actually 20 years of spring drive, right? Over 20 years to develop this movement and about 27 years to put it into continuous production. It was a long, tedious task to create spring drive and make it work efficiently and put it into production, right? So 9R65 was introduced in 2004. So we're celebrating 20 years of this iconic caliber this year in particular. When it was designed in 2004, the design theme was based on the Hotaka and Jonen mountain range that surround our Shinshu watch studio in central Japan. And you can see the outline of the mountains and the rolling hills of Shinshu depicted in the oscillating weights bridge. Of course, more modern introductions pay tribute to Japan as well. In northern Japan, in the Iwate prefecture, right, we make all of our mechanical timepieces. And so the tentograph, right, our 10-beat, 3-day automatic chronograph is featuring the dial inspired by the many ridges and contours of Mount Iwate, which you can see from our Grand Seiko studio Shizukuishi in northern Japan. It's a beautiful sight, mostly covered in clouds on most days, but you get it on a good day. It's really an overbearing mountain that they call Nambu Fuji. It looks like Mount Fuji, same shape basically, but smaller in size. Going back to Nagano Prefecture in central Japan where we make spring drive, we have our spring drive 5-day power reserve with what we call the Minamo dial. So this expresses the lake surface or the water surface of Lake Suwa, which you may recall is also represented on the back of the 8 days movement. So the Lake Suwa dial is now becoming one of the most popular dials amongst Grand Seiko collectors. So this dial actually looks like water surface shimmering. It's really a remarkable dial, and I highly recommend. Fortunately, I don't have a sample for you to see this evening, but please go check one out when you have a chance. And of course, we have the white birch, right? This model went on to win the Grand Prix de Horologie de Genève Best in Men's category in 2021. So basically like the Oscars for watchmaking, and we won Best in Men's category with the white birch. We're very, very proud and honored to have won this prestigious award, and with good reason, I feel. I'm wearing the watch tonight. I think it's a good representation of our brand overall. And the depiction of white birch forests in actually both Nagano and Iwate Prefecture are very prevalent. So you can find white birch very commonly in those two areas. And so with this dial, we have this tremendous pattern that seems quite bold and aggressive. And it really is. Unfortunately, it's a very delicate process to create this texture, and this dial base, right, a brass dial base, is only 0.5 millimeter in thickness. So to apply pressure using a mold in our press patterning technique, we couldn't achieve such an aggressive texture with just one pressing. So we had to do several. And it's basically 7 steps of pressing to achieve this dial pattern, and then of course, we have to achieve the color, so a silver plating process is used, and of course, multiple surface coatings. So you have a depth that is tremendous, and yet still smooth to the touch on the top surface. So this is, just a taste of all of the process that goes into making the white birch dial. It is very complex. Honestly, I can't think of a dial in Grand Seiko that is not complex to craft. So many of these molds, like I said, I said previously, we can create by either hand carving the mold or utilizing various tools to create these varying textures. And it's very important that we find these unique expressions, let's say, of Japan to create our own distinct aesthetic. Of course, at the same time, you look at the case for the white birch, and it's also quite complex in its geometry, and crafting it is just as complex. And to achieve Zaratsu is not just as cookie cutter as I may make it sound, and I know I've emphasized that tonight, but most of our cases can be manufactured either through cold forging techniques, compressing basically the metal over and over again to shape, or CNC milling, or a combination of both. So, there's a lot of steps that go into creating the case before it can even make it down to the Zaratsu polishing, which is the multi-step process that really creates and defines the geometry of the case itself. So, with that said, I've explained a lot tonight, but I think I should leave it to the master. I am very proud and honored to introduce Grand Seiko's design director. It doesn't get any better than this to talk about design. So, Junichi Kamata is our design director, and I'm very honored to welcome you to the stage right now. So. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here at Horological Society of New York. For centuries, Japanese culture has treasured that interplay of light and shadow. Let me explain how this sensibility lies at the heart of the Japanese sense of beauty and Grand Seiko design. The appreciation of beautiful gradations, not simply black or white, but shades of gray, is part of the cultural DNA of the Japanese people. As Joe mentioned, you may have seen a traditional Japanese house with paper doors and windows. Sunlight does not shine directly through the paper shoji, but is filtered and produces soft shades of gray on the tatami mat inside. We enjoy this. We treasure it. We do not see light as good and shadow as bad. Grand Seiko style, which emphasized the interplay of light and shadow, originated in 1967 with the 44GS. We represented for the first time in 2020 with a new Evolution 9 collection. Otherwise known as E9, the E9 style may look different from the 44GS at a glance, but the basic concept is the same. It is not an evolution that denies the past, but a nuance of transition. And Grand Seiko continues to evolve over time. It is important to remember it is made to be a practical watch, but its evolution is important to suit the needs of the modern world. For example, when the 1998 model was released, men's fashion was clearly divided between on and off styles, and the office was dominated by the suit. To match the lifestyle, the case had a mirror finish and was shaped to reflect a lot of light to give the watch strong personality. On the other hand, in 2020, diversity was respected. The boundaries between on and off work become blurred, and office style become more flexible. In order to fit with both on and off-duty lifestyles, light reflection has been suppressed, making it suitable for everyday use. The major change to E9 included improving visibility with clear and distinct hand, and matching our markers and slightly sportier design. The design also incorporates curved surfaces which are both brushed and mirror polished. The top surfaces are not mirrored as on the 44GS. The light reflects on the surfaces more delicately than the 44GS, creating a softer and quieter brilliance. This again shows how we design with light and shadow. At the same time, E9 improves comfort with a wide and thick bracelet and case with a low center of gravity. It creates an impressive feeling on the wrist. Of course, we retain our brand philosophy, the nature of time, with the white badge high beat 80 hours going on to win beat in men's category for the 2021 GPHG. This model was the first to truly emphasize the evolution of the aesthetic for the dial. E9 Sports style was introduced in 2022 and the E9 dress style in 2024, each of which is important to establish the modern lifestyle change. The E9 guarantees the functionality required of the basic wristwatch at a high level, and also combine it with beauty to bring out the user's individuality. Watches are items that enrich time, and they have been passed down to future generations as they contain the drama and stories of their users. Intentionally, the new model watch, which has its inspiration drawn from Birch work. It is a totally new and impressive dial that is possible because of techniques from two different dial designs. One is the original white birch, and the other from the annual tree ring style also introduced in 2021. As you can see, there are two techniques adapted from the tree rings dial pattern, with one adapted from the white birch. Thanks to these various dial processing technologies, we are able to create something completely new and unique. And I would like to share something else that is very important to our design, a concept called mitate. Mitate is something like a metaphor. For example, you have seen a picture of the traditional Japanese rock garden. It's designed to represent the ocean. And it is the sand represents the water, and the large rocks represent island. This is mitate. Indirect expression instead of simple presentation. It has been Central Japanese culture and art for centuries. And it is key to our famous dial designs. Grand Seiko dials evoke a theme. They do not paint a picture of the theme. These dials are not photographic images of snow or cherry blossoms. They are expressions that suggest rather than showing. As a result, each wearer enjoys a slightly different perception of their watch, and we hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.
So in conclusion, we really appreciate everyone coming out tonight, and we hope you have a better understanding of Grand Seiko's sense of aesthetic, why we do what we do, and we hope to continue to evolve, right? You now see the Evolution 9 was all about the evolution of Grand Seiko. We're not only pursuing new heights in watchmaking, as I mentioned before, we're attaining a higher degree of accuracy, power reserve, longevity, but we're also aiming to create a new sense of aesthetic for Grand Seiko that is overpowering with light and shadow. So thank you all very much. Thank you to Horological Society of New York, and have a great evening. We do have Q&A, don't we? So we stay for Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, now we can open it up to Q&A. Just wanted to say thank you both for the incredible lecture. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I'll bring the microphone to you. Okay, in the back.
Mostly
Thank you for the lecture. This was just a wonderful opportunity, and of course, always enjoy learning more about the brand. So this is kind of going to be a tie-in to a lecture that I got to hear at the GS9 event that was hosted in Brooklyn several years back. So as we talk about the evolution of the brand, right? We talk about the history of Japan, culture, fashion, sort of like looking through a very tiny lens into Western culture, right? You kind of saw what you liked and you tried to amplify and try and build on that. I guess my question now following this lecture is, as the world has gotten smaller since the 1960s, right? Telecommunications, you just opened the largest Grand Seiko space in the world thousands of miles away from your origin. My question would be is, are you taking more from other Swiss brands, more from mainstream, and deciding, hey, we kind of like that idea, we want to build on that? Or do you find yourself wanting to kind of sort of double down on what you've already established on? Or is it sort of like somewhere in between? Thank you.
Give me just a second. I want to consult here. So maybe I'll start and then we'll have you join shortly after. So I think in the grand scheme of things for Grand Seiko, in terms of aesthetic, in terms of design, in terms of global presence, yes, of course, we see the global market as a very important market, but I also think at the same time that it's very important that we stay true to our roots. So now, obviously, Grand Seiko is evolving. We're trying to improve. We're trying to continue to impress, let's say. I mean, we introduced a constant force tourbillon as a perfect example, but the reasoning behind it was that it met all of Grand Seiko's standards. It met all of those design codes, and it met the sense of aesthetic that is Grand Seiko's. So I think that while we are becoming a more global brand, we will always retain kind of the Japaneseness that Grand Seiko is now currently known for. And I hope that's answering more or less your question, but good. So that is the conclusive answer between both of us.
All right, any other questions? I think I saw one other back. Okay.
Thank you. On some of those birch watch faces and some of the other things you showed us, what is the fail rate?
Failure rates in manufacturing a dial.
Because it was so thin and stuff like that, I mean.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't really have an answer that we can disclose. And honestly, I don't think it would be very much, to be perfectly honest. Just based on the manufacturing techniques that we utilize, I'm sure that it would potentially be very low, but unfortunately we can't disclose an actual answer.
All right, any other questions? Any other questions? Here we go, back in the back of the room.
I was going to say, this is going to be too easy tonight. 2 questions.
I guess I just wonder, like a chicken and the egg thing, does the aesthetics really inspire the production of technique, or is it pushing the technique that you then find inspiration and adapt it to the aesthetic?
I want to let him answer some, so I could answer, but I'm waiting for him. No one wants to hear me talk anymore. I'm here all the time.
We start from the technologies.
So yeah, from a manufacturing standpoint, we have to obviously have the ability to produce it first, and then we can start to work around. I can honestly say that these our design team, I've seen pictures of them in various locations in nature, doing photography to get their sources of inspiration. So obviously the inspiration is there, but we also have to have the manufacturing capability in order to achieve some of the goals that we have. So sometimes it's finding the right pairing to be able to bring the right concept to life, if that makes sense.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. Huge fan.
Thank you.
What is the timeline for making a watch? Like from start to end, what is the amount of hours that go into each watch?
That's a very difficult question to answer, and I can field this one based on the fact I've asked this question numerous times, and it's really inconclusive. And I don't think anyone at the factories could actually tell you either. They have probably had this question more times than imaginable. And to define time into producing a Grand Seiko watch, there are too many variable factors to actually give a definitive time. But when you incorporate all of the processes, it is a very long time. So unless you have anything to add, I think that, of course, I want him to be able to field some of the questions, but a lot of the times I know the answer and we need a little translational help, so, you know. There you go. Usually about 1 year.
The special mode is 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of variable factors, but from scratch to finish, you know, and this is really more pertaining to bringing the designs to life. You know, one year can be done, 2 to 3 years on more special models. No, thank you.
How vertically integrated is Grand Seiko, and how many parts do you like source from Seiko or other parts of the company?
So Seiko Group as a whole is the parent company of both Seiko and Grand Seiko brands. So you know the group is kind of the more important factor. But as a manufacturer, we are vertically integrated in almost every way you can think of. We do everything from the movement production to case, dials, all of these things we have, the ability to do in-house. Even, in quartz watches, we grow quartz in-house and manufacture integrated circuits. So there's not much we cannot do. So I hope that gives you a good idea of what's possible. But yeah, we are a very vertically integrated manufacturer.
This is a very interesting question, and I want to press on it just a little bit. Sure. Is there anything that you can say, that you could publicly disclose, that you do not manufacture in-house, that you bring in?
I'll let him consult on that. I know.
For example, the
Glass, yeah. Leather. Yeah. So.
All right. Fair enough. All right. Okay.
This question's for Junichi. What is your favorite model right now, and why?
Yes, today I have the tintograph. I like this. So because of the dial finish is very beautiful. Yeah. So I saw the sky in the midnight at the Morioka Prefecture. Yeah, that was a very starry night. It expressed the scene. Yes. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
I like that answer too. Yeah, I want one too.
Hi,
Very
Joe.
jealous.
Well, great presentation.
Thank you.
I think the presentation was so holistic, but there was one element that I feel like you didn't really touch on, which is the bracelet. So I was wondering if you think the bracelet is almost like complementary to, in a sense, you don't want to put so much emphasis on the bracelet because everything else is happening. So you want to have the bracelet almost like complementary, but not taking the spotlight from the watch as a whole. And another, following of that question is, will we get to see any sort of innovations in terms of, switching up like different elements in the bracelet?
I think that there's a couple, when it comes to like future things, we're not really supposed to say anything. In terms of the bracelet itself, I will say that there is a lot of care and attention that's put into Grand Seiko bracelets. In terms of the design, when you're looking at something like a 44GS or 62GS, if you look at the inside of the links as an example, the curvature, the shape, the geometry of the links and design overall are very important. Of course, a lot of beveling also on the bracelets, so a lot of work that goes into it. And at the same time, Evolution 9 is very focused on the bracelet. So the bracelet width and thickness are two of the main important parts to create a new level of comfort in Grand Seiko. That is a huge focus for us. And now on those, the all brushed finish may look like it's not as challenging to do compared to the 5-piece with the high polished inner links. But at the same time, it's just as complicated of a thing. In terms of what's coming new, of course, we're going to continue to innovate in all aspects of watchmaking. But do you have anything you'd like to contribute to that?
Yes, and we are concerned about the weight balance between the case, clasp, and the bracelet width or thickness. Yes.
Yeah, so when you look, basically like when you look at the design of a Grand Seiko bracelet overall, most of them have a very thin profile. That's one of the aims, and always trying to strike that balance between the head of the watch and the bracelet itself are key elements. I do think all Grand Seikos wear very comfortably, and I prefer personally on a bracelet, but at the end of the day, I do think that the Evolution 9 is a new sense of comfort and has really kind of proven a point for Grand Seiko that we are focusing on that aspect. So, and yes, we will continue to evolve.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for such an informative lecture. I wanted to revisit the discussion on the topic of design principles and the design rules that were discussed earlier in the lecture. And my question is, how do you feel that Grand Seiko is maybe adapting those design rules and design principles to a younger and more diverse generation of customers?
Do you want to discuss? So I mean, from my point of view, and always kind of giving the outside point of view in terms of the Japanese sense of aesthetic, and also my own personal feeling. I think that Evolution 9 is another kind of bold move towards, let's say, a younger target audience that is more casual. But I feel like everyone today is a bit more casual. So the sportier, more sporty design of our Evolution 9 collection is really kind of catering to that. But since this is his specialty, I'll let Mr. Kamata take over.
Yeah, we're considering about case finish. So we choose the hairline and mirror polished volume. So nowadays the hairline is more than the mirror polish. It is adapted to the modern lifestyle. Yes. So like this.
So yeah, where 44GS has a very mirror surface on both the bezel and on the case sides. This is beautifully brushed. And also, I kind of made a point during the presentation that like when you look at almost any Grand Seiko up until recently, they're always mirror polished bezels. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it is a really big deal that we have this brushed finish on the bezel now. To me, and being a Grand Seiko fan and collector before joining the company, when I saw this aesthetic, I was really impressed, and I was very surprised that this was the direction the brand was going, because it was so kind of against the design code, but it's a very simple thing. And also, I like the graining linear as opposed to radial. More difficult to achieve, so it's kind of a showcase of the craftsmanship as well as being, a little more sporty. So I hope that helped answer your question.
So let's do. Let's have two more questions, then we'll wrap up
She had one here in the front,
the
too,
formal
so
portion.
If you still have it.
I don't think you are allowed to say it.
Oh, that might be, yeah.
I was interested about in regards to of the materials that you were using, the different alloys. You were mentioned the 2 titanium, the platinum, but what are some other alloys that you're experimenting with or other materials? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we have tried, like, we have done work with ceramics and things of that nature, and we still do, of course. I'll let you consult if you'd like while I stall in the meantime. But no, I think ceramics is kind of out of the box for Grand Seiko, and it took us a while to get there to do it safely because it is a kind of brittle material. So we wanted to make sure that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right and make it as impact resistant as we can possibly make it. But Mr. Kamata.
So basically, we have the 4 kinds of metal materials. For stainless steel, one is a 316L, and the ever brilliant steel. And the other hand, the titanium is a intensity titanium, and the brilliant hard titanium. So we're using these 4.
I think kind of coming back to your question, like the focus on titanium, I think you don't see so much focus on titanium in the watch industry in general. It's an amazing material. And I feel it's very underrated because many people, especially if you're new to watches and you don't understand the metal itself, you may mistake a lightweight material like titanium as being inexpensive, right? But in actuality, it's more costly, especially when it's highly polished and highly scratch resistant and kind of all the benefits that our alloys do have. So for Grand Seiko to continue to pursue titanium and be most successful with titanium, 2 of our top selling models, our top 2 selling models are both titanium. Like that's kind of unheard of from most brands. So I think that titanium is a big focus, but outside of what we're already experimenting with, we wouldn't be able to disclose anymore.
Okay, we've got a lot of extra questions coming in. Let's just do 2 more for the formal portion, and then afterwards we can. Yes, so let's go over here.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. This was great. I was curious, zooming out a little to the Seiko watches. Of course, they're very different brands, different standards of production, and different design codes. But I'm curious to what extent these traditional Japanese aesthetics, like light and dark and the 24 seasons, influence the Seiko watches.
I think that'll be tough to say. So, I mean, at the end of the day, again, they're 2 very different brands. And of course, these Japanese sense of aesthetics are traits that are inherent to Japan. So, there may be a little overlap in regard to that sense of aesthetic. But at the same time, for Seiko, it's a little difficult to create cases of this kind of geometry. And keep it within maybe their target price range. So I think that when you are really looking for the best expression of light and shadow, you can't look away from Grand Seiko because there's no other way to make a case like this that really has that distinct interplay of light and shadow. There is a lot to be said about the dials and the manufacturing techniques, as well as the case making, that you're not going to find overlap. In terms of natural elements, nature itself, you see overlap a little bit in Seiko, but you also see overlap in the Japanese domestic brand Curator as well, which is the price point is typically on par with Grand Seiko, or can be higher, but most people associate Curator with a higher price tag because they're not as prevalent in the world, and the one that everyone knows is starting at $42,000. So it's not just kind of the difference between Seiko, Grand Seiko, and Curator as well. I think a little bit of there's a little bit that's shared across the board, but you get what you pay for, And really, at the end of the day, Grand Seiko, I think, is one of the best expressions of case design that you can find, you know, I mean, personally, I feel amongst any brand, but reality is, you know, these are really impressive case shapes. So even Curator, I would say, would struggle to compete with the Grand Seiko case to have that interplay of light and shadow. So I hope that helps answer your question a little bit. Great, thank you.
Okay, let's have the last question of the evening here in the back of the room.
Great, thanks. Great presentation. Probably a lot of people are going to be upset that this is the last question. But I got a personal question and then another question. The personal question is for the both of you. What's your favorite complication that you will actually wear? And the second question is, with all the pride of Zaratsu and the polish and the light and shadow, would you ever consider making a watch that's matte? Maybe a piece unique that would completely stand out in the collection of this is the black sheep of Grand Seiko. Thank you.
I'll definitely save the second question for him. I know what the answer is going to be, but I would rather he answer it than me because, you know, he's in charge. So, but I know what he's going to say. In terms of a complication I would actually wear, I mean, you know, I'd be more than thrilled to be wearing a constant force tourbillon on my wrist. Who wouldn't, right? But I mean, for me, the practicality of Grand Seiko has always been like I don't know if I liked that first or if Grand Seiko made me that way. Honestly, I can't tell you which came first. But on the 8 days, right, long power reserve, high accuracy because it's spring drive, and then the other odd thing that it has is a jumping hour hand. So like because it's so precise and because it has a long power reserve and I travel a lot, like it's not really a complication, it's more a feature. But I will say that's like one of the things I love the most is something simple and practical. So, your turn.
Complication. Unfortunately, I don't have the complication watch. Yeah.
Close enough chronograph.
Yeah, including the chronograph. Yeah. In the future, I want to be the complication watch.
Would you ever see Grand Seiko make a watch that is completely matte finish?
Complete matte finish.
Like bead blast, sand blast.
Yeah. No. No.
I knew what the answer was going to be, but I'd rather hear it from him.
Well, thank you all, and thank you to Junichi and Joe. Let's give them another round of applause.
Thank you, sir. Great.